Hi, and welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Liddy, and I'm the public defender of the 19th Judicial Circuit. We are going to be talking to a wonderful gentleman today, and it is Jeff Shearer, correct?
Yes.
And you are the CEO of Tykes and Teens.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff, before we talk about the cool stuff that we're going to be talking about today, before we started rolling, I learned some stuff I didn't know, which I'm sorry to say. You're the CEO of Tykes and Teens. Let's start with just the basic question. What is Tykes and Teens?
Well, the name can be deceiving.
Okay.
Tykes and Teens, we provide affordable mental health services to children and their families.
Okay.
And that essentially, we have several programs as well, like an alternative to out-of-school suspension, but mental health and understanding mental health kind of influences everything that we do.
Okay, and tell me physically, that is deceiving, because people would not, if you were going down, if you needed mental health services for your tyke or teen, and you were going to, you would not call you without going further.
Correct.
Where are you located physically? Tell me.
For 19 years we were in Martin County, and 3 years ago we decided to expand to the Treasure Coast. So we're now in St. Lucie, Okeechobee, and Indian River County. So we actually have 3 offices in Martin County where we provide outpatient services.
Okay, it's all outpatient.
It's all
is it
outpatient.
Not? Okay.
And then in Okeechobee we actually provide services in the schools there.
Okay.
So we're in 7 of their 9 schools. 2 of the schools just does not physically have space for us, but that's how we're able to provide services in Okeechobee. We have an office in Indian River County in Vero. We collaborate with Healthy Start up there.
Okay.
But in St. Lucie County and Indian River County, we primarily focus on the 0 to 5 population. So what we call infant mental health.
So 0 to 5 have mental issues?
So we focus on the dyad, so the child and whoever their primary caregiver is.
Okay.
So children, and this is going to lead into our conversation, but children really do express themselves through their behavior, not with words. And we know that young children actually can have very disruptive behavior or express really some mental health concerns. And those concerns...
Even at that early
Even at that very early age,
wow.
because it's in context of their relationship with their parent.
Okay.
We've only been doing this service for 3 years, so it's relatively new to me, and I'm a clinician as well. But one of my very first cases, I had a 10-month-old that I was working with. And when I read his initial assessment, they just said, oh, he's an easygoing kid. Well, when I actually began to work with the family, the child was actually profoundly depressed. One of the things they did...
And how old was this child?
He was 10 months old. And one of the things they identified in the assessment is that he wasn't eating very well. But they didn't think about any of the other things that were going on with him as to what was the function of that not eating, or really he lacked any kind of expression. So he never would get frustrated. He had absolutely no verbal expression at all. Right? Typically children should be babbling, engaging, what we call serve and return.
Right.
And he was doing nothing because he'd given up.
How can you be depressed at 10 months old?
Well, he had experienced some significant trauma, had been removed from his family. And when it's the only thing you've ever known and you're not with those people, some people react in a depressed way. And 10-month-old children do as well. And what we know about brain science now and the way the brain develops is that the stimulation that we get in those very early ages changes the way that our brain adapts. So it's adapting to this kind of negative situation. So really the quicker we can respond to that, the quicker we can help that child become hopeful again, which is through the work with the family, right? Because I worked with the mom and the child. So mom was struggling with addiction. It was one of the reasons why he was not with his mom. So I had to get her, so she loved her kid. There was no doubt that she loved her kid, but she was not reading his cues because her desire to be connected with him is so great that she could only see it this way. She couldn't see it this way. And so one of the things that I helped her do is to read the cues that her son was giving and what kind of response he was saying to her so that she could then respond back to him. So I had her do, and this was probably our biggest aha moment. This is like my 3rd session with her, and we had these little squeaky toys. And so she was squeaking the toy to try to get him engaged. And she put it up against his face, and it was really the first time in the time that I worked with them that he actually had an emotional reaction. So it's like, okay, he's coming around. So clearly this has some meaning. So I said to Mom, did you ever blow on him? Because that's kind of what it looked like from the toy.
Right.
She's like, well, yes, I used to blow on him to help him fall asleep. I said, well, I think he's asking you to blow on him. And so she did. And she had him in his arms. Remember, he's probably just a year old at this point in time. Had him in his arm like this. And she blew on him. And his shoulders relaxed. And he looked straight into her eyes. And it was like, this is the mom that I miss. And she,
oh my God!
She
okay.
could see that response, and then of course it helped her. Now this is someone who's struggling with addiction, right? And we know addiction is not an easy battle to overcome. But she recognized, I don't need to get clean and sober just for me. I need to get clean and sober for him, because now I can see him. Whereas before, she was just loving on him. She wasn't recognizing that he was pulling away from her. He was pulling his face away because he was mad. He was like, you left me, Mom.
Well,
and so creating that connection is what I had to work on and get her to see that. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And that's a 10-month-old. You know,
okay. So as I said earlier, I always learn this is an aha moment for me. Okay, seriously. And this is what I don't do what you do, but as you know, this is what I see every day.
Yes.
But oh my gosh, this is so interesting. Let's wait. We're way ahead.
Yeah,
okay.
we kind of fell down.
Yeah. No, this is great. Okay, so the child, just so I have the background and the viewers have background, the child evidently was born and taken away from her shortly after his birth?
He was about 10 months old when he was removed.
And that's when he started being depressed, or he was?
Yes, I don't know because I didn't see him prior to that, but my assumption was that his response to the removal of his mom was depression.
Okay,
yes.
It wasn't he came out of the womb depressed.
Most people don't.
Okay, that happened. Then he got depressed, and then you got okay.
And because of the brain architecture and how it developed so rapidly in those first 3 years, the quicker we can respond to that, because what would happen typically, right, involvement with Department of Children and Families, if Mom got clean and sober, she would have gotten him back, but that would have been 6 months later, and then they would have been able to repair the relationship. Well, fortunately, I was able to repair the relationship right away, and it gave Mom another level of motivation to help her get clean and sober. And I'll tell you, the outcome was wonderful. I worked with the family for a little over a year. She was able to get full-time employment. She actually moved out of the community where she was having difficulties to remove the triggers. She established a relationship with the baby's father, lived independently. I mean, it could not have been a better outcome. And I do believe a lot of that is because of the unity between all three of them, because I did engage the father in treatment as well. There were some issues that he was struggling with,
right,
as you can imagine, because the child was in foster care, so it didn't go with either parent. But by getting people to see the world through someone else's eyes, it really changes you. And the great thing I love about working with babies is there's no language, right? You have to be able to interpret all of those behaviors through behavior, and only through behavior. So you really have to pay attention. You don't just have to listen. You actually have to pay attention. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about is trauma-informed care, and that really is the essence of trauma-informed care, is that let's not talk about the words, because people say lots of different things. Let's look at the behavior, and what's the meaning behind that behavior, because it means something. And if we can actually
whether
address,
you're a baby or an adult.
even whether you're a baby or an adult.
Okay.
And if we actually understand it more effectively, then we can meet the needs of those individuals far more quickly, because most of the time people don't even know what it is that they need. But their behavior is telling us something. And especially if it's disruptive behavior. You know, we deal with in the delinquency system, or in children who have been suspended from school. This is one of our big movements, is working with trauma-informed care within the school system, so that teachers can see behaviors in a different way, so we can address it as opposed to escalating the behaviors.
Define for me trauma-informed care.
So basically, trauma-informed care is seeing behavior through a trauma lens.
Okay.
So instead of saying, what's wrong with you, we ask, what's going on? So if we have a deeper understanding of what's going on, then maybe we can respond to it in a different way. And,
And so by asking that question, you determine what they need or what help they
Correct.
To give them.
So I'll give you an example. This is probably a terrible example, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So when we talk about the shooting down in Parkland,
okay,
we know that his father died when he was 6 years old. His mother had died about a year prior to the events that occurred on Valentine's Day. When I was looking at the data, when he was in 8th grade, he had a kind of a bump in his behaviors. That's when most of his disruptive behaviors had occurred. And then it kind of quieted down. When he was in 10th grade, or it may even been 11th grade, shortly after his mother died is when he had gotten in trouble again. So probably 6 weeks after his mother had died, there was a fight that had occurred at school, and he got suspended. Now, if we understand that a child has now basically has been orphaned, right? He has no one in his life. He ended up going with a family friend, which is where he went after the death of his mother. Well, to understand that his tolerance level is going to be a little low, if I wrapped around him at that point in time as opposed to dealing with him, oh, you're a bad kid, because he had this history back in 8th grade. He was clearly very disruptive in 8th grade. Have no idea what that's about. If I had been his therapist, that would be something that I would be exploring to kind of give me meaning there. But it made complete sense to me that 6 weeks after that he got in trouble. Well, they ended up expelling him. So not only was he rejected from his family, but then he was rejected by society as well. So to me, it's very obvious as to why he targeted, not that absolutely no justification of his behavior. But if we had read that behavior in a different way, like I'm looking to be connected, as opposed to I've given up on everyone, I'm going to push everyone away, which is what he was doing. Well, what he's asking for is bring me into the fold. And if we looked at him in that way, especially given that he had no family, he was the oldest of the, he had younger siblings, but he was the oldest. He had no one to lean on.
So you're saying if you had been his therapist, you had realized the trauma that he had undergone, then you would care for him in a specific way and give him treatment, if you will, for his obvious mental illness.
Instead of just dealing with the discipline issue, which, again, we need to deal with the discipline. It's not okay to fight at school. But if we say it in a compassionate way, like, so you're not worthy of being on this campus, so you need to get away from here. You're no longer welcome onto the school campus, as opposed to, we need to take a time out here. Let's kind of pull things together. Let's take a breather, go get some resources, and then we can come back and we'll support you when you come back. But because of his previous history, they had no more tolerance of it. He had already been disruptive, and so it was like, now he's too disruptive to be on this campus.
But you do realize that people that are watching this are saying, what are we to do? How can we bring people in the fold and try to love them and nurture them when they're disruptive? I mean, at some point there has to be consequences for their actions. So what's your response?
Well, so my first response my first response is, what's better?
Okay.
17 dead?
Yeah. No,
because that was the outcome. So again, I'm not saying that we should not hold people accountable, but if we understood the meaning behind that was just not a fight between two boys. This was a kid who was hurting, and so if we looked at it a little bit differently, if he had a broken arm, we would have responded very differently than a kid who had a broken heart. But because we can't see it, and for boys in particular, they become more aggressive, that we see it as, oh, he is a delinquent, so let's manage this as a delinquent behavior, as opposed to what's wrong with you, so what's going on with you. And I don't know, honestly, if the school knew that his mother had died. I don't know.
You're not,
because if we don't ask that question, if we don't ask that question, because my experience is that when I've worked with schools, when they know what's going on with kids, they do respond differently. But they don't always ask. Because
or they don't. It's so big, and there's so many kids, and there's so much going on. They don't have the time to ask.
And again, that may not have been the best example in the world because of the catastrophic things that had happened. But so I'll give you a better example. So there was a viral video that occurred about a year and a half ago up in South Carolina. It was a little 16-year-old black girl in class, and she refused to give up her phone to the teacher. So the teacher then, and our traditional method of dealing with discipline is that if I can't manage it, I'll do the higher up. So she called the assistant principal. He came in, they engaged in it, she refused to give up the phone, so then he called law enforcement. Law enforcement came in, and they had a tussle, Remember, you may recall that she went to the floor, he ended up getting fired, and she ended up getting expelled from school. Well, the backstory there is that her mother had died 2 years previous. She was in foster care, so she had no one. Well, how do teenagers connect? They connect through that phone. She had broken up with a boy earlier that day, and so she was trying to take care of herself. So this occurred in October. So surely the teacher knew. One of the things we talk about in trauma-informed care is that if the behavior is out of the ordinary, it's not about what's happening in this time and place. More than likely, this kid had been compliant for the first 9 weeks of school or 10 weeks of school. This probably was behavior out of the ordinary. So when the teacher was having this conflict, that should, if you were trauma-informed, that would have been a trigger of, this is not normal. This is not about the phone. There's something else that's going on here. And the teacher could have said, hey, what's going on? Well, I broke up with a boy. I can't focus in class. Okay, do you want to go to guidance? And we could send him to guidance, and then she would have been able to teach that day, and the classroom would not have been disruptive. But instead, what happened is, I don't know if you've ever seen the video, but there's probably 10 other kids that's got their video phones out, and they're all recording this. Surely she did not teach that day. So is it difficult to see that in a different way? It is a paradigm shift, right? We deal with kids from, you are down here and we are up here, and that is how and if I can't do it, then I'm going to go up here to manage these behaviors. Trauma-informed is ask what happened, what's going on. Because this is out of the ordinary.
What if
behavior.
they say, I don't want to know, I don't want to tell you? So
what would that tell me?
Well, there's more issues.
Or that my relationship with that person is not, because we are vulnerable in relationship of other people. So it is not, so that would tell me that there's probably prior history in that relationship between the two of them. So if she's not willing to tell me, then, okay, well, do you need to go somewhere to take care of yourself? And of course, there are lots of other things. I mean, right, we could say, I'm doing a math lesson that day, and so she's being avoidant of math, and that's why she's being disruptive.
Right.
But that, again, that would be information that the teacher would already know, so the way I would manage it might be a little bit different. My suspicion, though, is that this is a kid who did not have discipline issues. She'd been in school for, she's 16 years old, so whatever, a sophomore, junior. So this is not a kid who had a history of being defiant. So therefore, it was meaningful. Right, it's out of the ordinary. So when a kid is doing something out of the ordinary, it's not typically about what's happening right then and there.
So that's just a basic commandment or tenet or whatever of
trauma-informed.
Is that if it's out of the, if it's ordinary and they're disruptive every single day, then you got to deal with. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Okay. Oh my goodness, Jeff, this is wonderful. Let's back up though a minute, because we're so ahead. I mean, I've got a million questions. You're going to have to come. We're going to have to do another show. I already can tell you right now. Okay, because I want to go back to your, how this all started and Tykes and Teens. What is your background? What are you?
I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
Okay.
So my first heart and everything that I do is as a therapist.
And you started Tykes and Teens when?
In 1996 is when we started services.
And so you have been the CEO since 1996?
Correct.
Okay. And you do hands-on therapy?
I still see clients today, yes.
Okay.
It's what I love to do.
Okay. Okay. And so how does somebody even find out about, how does someone who's in need of services and help find out about Tykes and Teens? And how do you get paid? No, seriously. I mean, because to some people who are watching, they may say, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need." So tell us. I mean,
so we anyone who offers money, I apply for it. So that's one of my strengths is I'm very good at getting lots of different money to be able to provide for our services. So the only thing I want to clarify is that, remember, 19 years we've been in Martin County, so we've done very well in Martin County. So we have 3 different offices in Martin County. We're
how
in
many
the
people
schools
do
there.
you? How many kids?
We have about actively, I think when I looked last week, we had about 1,200 clients. So we were actively seeing
in the 4 counties.
In the 4 counties.
Wow.
And probably 800 of those, maybe 750 of those are Martin County residents, because that's where most of our And again, we do see bigger kids in Okeechobee, but in St. Lucie and in New River County, it's only the 0 to 5. So until I get better support,
more money
to be able to expand those services in Indian River and St. Lucie, we will, but we're just not there yet. But because of the whole brain architecture thing, that's why we did the infant mental health.
Well, how many? Okay, real quick, who works for you, and how many are they licensed?
Yes, most of our staff are therapists. So we again we have some other outlying programs.
And how many of those do you have?
We have about 70 therapists.
In the 4 counties?
In the 4
Wow.
counties,
I was going to say, how do you manage that many clients? Okay. And so how did they get to you?
So they're all master level clinicians. One of the things that we do well is we provide a lot of training and support of people who come right out of school. So we love new graduates because we do have a great infrastructure within our organization, but we have very little turnover in staff, so we have a lot of seasoned people as well, so we can deal with more complicated cases. We have a lot of prevention activities that we do in the community, which is kind of how we spread the message about mental health and what does mental health look like. I do this comparison of mental health versus physical health, that counseling and therapy is very similar to like going to the gym.
Right.
Right. Some people go to the gym to get better, right? I'm rehabbing. I broke my leg, and so I'm going to the gym in order to be able to repair
and for mental
something
health too. I mean.
Well, but I'm comparing this just to physical.
Yeah, I know,
right?
but you know what I'm saying. I mean, yeah.
Yes. Well, we do then know that endorphins occur and actually can absolutely.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes, that's
okay.
But if we look at it just from that clean comparison of going to the gym versus going to therapy, that there are vast. So most people, when they think of counseling, they think of mental illness. Right. So my definition of mental illness is a biological disorder. So some depressions are that way, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia are that way. Most people are just responding to things that are occurring in their life, hence the trauma-informed care.
Okay.
And so if I grow up in a very dysfunctional home, I'm going to adapt to that. However, that behavior will look dysfunctional. So as I grow up, and now I'm in a functional environment, my dysfunctional behavior that was functional here now looks dysfunctional and becomes problematic.
How do you explain someone who grew up in a dysfunctional family and turns out doesn't have any?
Well, I have a metaphor for that.
Okay.
That some people are.
No, I'm just,
Some people are orchids. Right? They need the right amount of temperature, the right amount of light, the right amount of everything to be perfect. And then some people are dandelions, and they can grow in the crack of a sidewalk. They don't need very much. And a lot of that has to do with temperament. So about 50% of our personality is based on genetics. It's what we're born with. And so if I have a temperament style to be a dandelion, I don't need to be in a home environment that has a lot. But if I have a temperament style like an orchid, then I need to have a lot of those things. And we'll see that where you'll have 4 children. 3 of them are outstanding, but then we have this one kid who seems to struggle. And it's because, for whatever reason, in that particular environment...
And that's genetics.
And that is genetics. Not much we can do about that.
Okay.
Now, again, what I would help with those parents is that, yes, your parenting interventions worked very well with these 3, but we need to look at their behavior in a different way. So how do we meet their needs?
Right.
Right, because if they're highly anxious...
You may have to change your parenting style for that one child.
To be that, right, because that one needs a lot more light as opposed to this one that doesn't necessarily. And of course, everything's on a continuum as well. But those are good visuals to understand about how,
I love it.
How that
I
is.
love it.
And so mental health is not just about mental illness, but it's about our response to our environment. And so if we can look at that and how do we adjust that, either we help our kids. So one of the issues we have today is our helicopter parents, right? Protect them from everything. Well, that actually isn't very good because you learn no capacity to be able to tolerate difficult things. Life is difficult, right? So I need to allow my children to suffer some consequences sometimes because that allows them to be able to navigate difficult things as opposed to just giving up. Right. And we don't want to do that. And so I'm a little ADD, but I'll give you another example of the Marshmallow Experiment. This is an experiment that's been done for 50 years. And so they would have children sit in front of a marshmallow. And they would have to sit there for 3 minutes. These are 3-year-old children. And they would have to sit there for 3 minutes. And if they could wait 3 minutes, they could get 2 marshmallows instead of 1. And what was really amazing about these studies, and it's been duplicated over and over again, is those kids who would immediately pick up those marshmallows actually had a more difficult time in life than those that could tolerate the 3 minutes. So if I know that my kid is someone who has a very difficult time delaying gratification, well, then I can work on that with that child because I know that kids who can delay gratification have a much more successful end of life, right? That's our goal, is for when we launch our kids, they're going to be successful adults. Right. Well, if I know that they have a temperament of difficulty delaying gratification, well, then I will be mindful in the way that I'm parenting that child to help them learn how to delay that gratification. So, and you can teach those skills. But if I don't know, if I'm not aware of it,
right.
they're just going to continue to do what they want.
So are you saying that if I had wanted to be the perfect, I mean, these are not loaded questions, and I think you're wonderful, so I just want to say that.
Okay.
Are you saying this knowledge of trauma-informed care could be beneficial for any parent?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, because it's a, as a parent, you have no idea what
I have
you're
two
doing
boys
right.
myself, yes.
Yeah. So you're saying that if parents, before they even have children, or let's say once they do, get the guidance, get the education on this, even if there's not a problem, they are going to be better at parents.
Yes, right. Because
Well, why don't we legislate this and make it mandatory if you're going to have a child?
Well, you know that doesn't work.
Yeah, no. But no, wouldn't that be, I think that's what we should do.
But why don't we teach class about it at school? Wouldn't that be
Right.
helpful to be able to, because it really helps all human interaction.
But
I mean, it really does. If we understand the meaning behind people's behavior, it makes so much more sense.
Well, let me ask you that. I cannot believe we are almost out of time. I have 5,000 million questions. We still haven't gotten to the ACE thing.
Yes, yes.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, and you got to tell us, how did, okay, let's go back. For the teachers, how many teachers know about this?
So we've trained almost 75.
Instead of worrying about the guns,
Yes.
and I shouldn't be.
That's my thing. Yes.
Let's educate the
Address
teachers.
where the problem is. Yes.
And
So we have I have a specialist in our office who goes around and trains schools and organizations on trauma informed. We have 4 different modules that we do.
But does every school get that training?
We're working at it. No, not yet. But
Do they have to request it, or
They just have to request it. Yes.
And you will come to them.
And we will come to it free of charge. I have a grant that pays for that, so there's no cost.
Oh, my
it's just
goodness.
the time and energy for the schools or organization to give us to provide that. We actually do staffings afterwards as well, because this is a very hard concept to get.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I've lived my whole life this way. My mother was a therapist, so I kind of grew up thinking in this way.
Was she a good parent?
She was a good parent, yes.
No, I had to ask that question too. No, obviously, but but she didn't know any of this.
We know so much more today than we did many years ago. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we know so much more.
Okay, so what does, because we've got like a minute left, if someone needs your help, how much does it cost? What do they do?
So fortunately, because of our funding, we actually have a sliding scale. So our minimum fee is $3. So depending on family size and family income, and we go up to 100. But you can make $50,000 a year, have a family of 4, and probably pay $10 a session. So it's a very reasonable. So if you have a high deductible,
wow.
Let's say you have a $1,500 deductible, and you have to pay $100 a week. Well, that's not affordable when you're making $50,000. A family's making $50,000, but you could apply for our sliding scale, and it reduces it down to $10 or $15.
Wow.
We are a Medicaid provider. We take a lot of different insurance. Not Blue Cross Blue Shield. We're still working on that. That's one of our difficulties. But those families can then apply for the sliding scale. So that's kind of how we rarely have a wait list. Occasionally we do because of capacity, but most of the time people can get in.
Oh my gosh, we're at the end of the show. You were wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.